Okay, and we're live. So I hope at least. Hey Daniel, how are you doing?
Pretty good. And you, Pascal?
Yeah, I'm good. Uh, it's been a while since we well, not since we talked, but it's been a while since we did a series on the threat researchers. Welcome everyone. I see that already some people joined us. So we had 14 people in a second ago. So thank you for joining us. We've been away for a while. Yeah, it was summer vacation. Not that we took a vacation, but we have been working on several things. But now it's September, and we will kick it off again. And we plan to go forward every month with some interesting topics. And talking about the interesting topic of this week, we will talk about DDoS for higher threat landscape. Without further ado, now if you have questions, the live chat is open. I'm monitoring the live chat, so if you have any question, any remark, feel free, ask the question while we're live. Of course, if you're looking on demand, yeah, there will not be a lot of reaction, but you can always leave a comment down below, and if there's a comment, we will try to reply. Otherwise, you can get in touch with us through Radware. Um, so my name is Pascal Henes. I'm the Director of Threat Intelligence for Redware, and with me is Daniel. Daniel, present yourself.
Hello, I'm Daniel, Head of Security Research for Radware.
I think most of you already know us or saw a previous episode. But for this one, though, we're gonna start with DDoS for higher threat landscape. And before we move into the actual DDoS for hire, I want to stop and talk a little bit about the different actors and what their motives are, because those are the people who actually make the market for DDoS for hire, right? So they
Yep.
have a need and they will need tools to go and work with. And why do they have a need? Well, they must have a certain motive. So if we look, for example, and I think the easiest one would be the angry people. So angry people, they are driven by revenge. So there might be a customer that is dissatisfied because you give him bad service or something happened, or an employee that you fired. They're disgruntled, and what they want to do, well, they want to attack you. And why do they want to attack you? Well, to damage your reputation. Hacktivists, more or less the same thing, driven by ideology, and they're out for political influence. They want to block websites to bring attention. Daniel, anything else you want to add in hacktivists?
I was going to actually double back to the angry people. It
Yeah.
also could cover gamers. A lot of things that
Oh,
we've
yeah.
been seeing lately is angry gamers. We've even seen some companies go after DDoSers themselves outside of law enforcement action. Um, a lot of times these gamers are mad because they're in a competition they've lost, or they're mad because someone else is actually doing better than they are in the competition. So they resort to petty little attacks to degrade their service. With hacktivists, it's kind of more of a popular subject lately. A lot of political issues going on across the world. Hacktivists like to launch denial of service attacks against different political parties to support their ideology, to market their opinion, and also to try and influence an election. Um,
Which is
won't
very
actually
timely,
influence.
actually. Yeah.
Yeah,
The election.
it's
Yeah.
very timely. We've seen a couple of attacks, different countries around the world in 2020. Belarus is one of the more popular
Oh, yeah.
ones.
Hmm.
Yeah, where political parties and also people are launching attacks. And when I say political parties, there is some question as if the political parties in Belarus are behind some of the outages to try and prevent people from communicating during moments of protest. And as you know, in the United States, this is something that we're very concerned of as we're marching towards November.
Yeah. Wasn't Belarus the country that suffered those massive DDoS attacks that nobody outside Belarus ever saw?
Yeah, it was very strange.
Yes.
There was
Yeah.
some professional parties that claimed it was a DDoS, and other professional parties that came out with
Hmm.
some evidence showing that it was a government censorship.
Yeah.
Kind of a coin flip on what's going on out there, but it is clear that there is censorship going on. Just a
Yeah.
question of who's
Absolutely.
behind it.
Yeah.
The thing that concerns me is that they're using, service degradation, either turning off the internet or they're using actual DDoS attacks to degrade that service,
Yeah.
preventing people from actually communicating about what's going on in these protests. And at the core of it, when you look back at a lot of the hacktivists, they want to launch DDoS attacks to actually prevent this. And now you're looking at political parties that are actually using degradation of service as a means to influence an election. So that's very concerning.
Yeah. Wow. they're adding a new type of DDoS. It's DDoS as an excuse, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I
So
guess that kind of falls into the nation state
yeah,
power.
yeah. I was gonna say the same. That actually draws the line back down to the nation state. So where you have the election and they want to protect themselves also from information going out. Other nation states that we saw in the past are attacks on certain countries to mix cyber and physical warfare, for example, create chaos in the cyber and then at the same time do the physical warfare. There are some books written about that, about especially Russia and Ukraine come back a lot in those books. Attacks from or attributed at least to Russia, where they were at the same time also more in a physical combat. So and the other is disruption, chaos, economic impact, and yeah, not related to DDoS, but I think that our friends in Korea. North Korea, that is, stealing. They are known to go after banks. You had the Swift incident a couple of years ago where they ran off with a couple of millions. Very sophisticated hack. Also, some cryptocurrencies that they are attributed to. Now, it's important to say whenever we talk nation states and we talk attacks, people do attribution. That means that somebody is saying, oh, it was that party based on information that I see here and evidence that I see there. It's always hard to do attribution and to be sure about attribution. Yeah, it fits
Oh,
the
100%.
motive, but yeah, they are innocent until proven guilty, I would say, right?
Well, to jump ahead a little bit of foreshadowing what we'll talk about is I think it's interesting that we saw an RDOS group using the North Korean group Lazarus.
Uh, yeah,
A lot of people look at TTPs of groups, right? And North Koreans are definitely about extortion and stealing money. And so when you see script kiddies using these TTPs to try and scare people into making payments, you really kind of have to stop and wonder for a second: is it Lazarus? Is it actually script kiddies? I think
yeah.
we all know it's script kiddies, but it definitely brings a whole new disruption and chaos into the category of nation states and script kiddies.
Yeah, yeah, I called it script kiddies, but I don't think the name is quite accurate. It's such a broad category because you have the real script
Right.
kiddies, the ones who do copy paste and run a small script based on a command by a commander general somewhere. Makes me think about Anonymous more kind of
Yeah.
action. But then you also have those who are launching ransom campaigns and who are making hoaxes, email hoaxes, and sending it out without actually doing DDoS attacks. They're already a little bit smarter. They can be script kiddies, but they can be smarter. And then you have the ones who come closer, and I think that the bridge between script kiddie and organized crime is not that big, because script kiddies need to learn somewhere, but as they get their points in the community, as they get access to more people, they know more people, they get more advanced tools and they get more experience, I think that they might more move into the category of organized crime and work together with more than one or even alone, having the experience and being driven by money to steal, launder, or do extortions.
Yeah, I mean, and that's definitely something that we see the bridge in between script kiddies and organized crime with competitors. A lot of times that these competitors are looking not only to launch attacks on their own, but they're also looking for someone to hire.
Uh,
Certain industries do see this, and it is definitely problematic to see that shift from wanting to actually purchase access to DDoS attacks and learning how to build your own botnet so you can actually take out your competitors.
yeah, yeah, and
It's a very dicey world there.
for those who need an actual example of that, so taking out your competitor with a DDoS attack, there was back in 2016. Remember when Mirai hit in October, Brian Krebs, OVH, and then the Dyn attacks, and then shortly after there was an actor who did an attack on Deutsche Telekom, trying to enslave 900,000 modems. It failed, but that same actor already had a botnet of 400,000 bots, and there is actually an image in the marketplaces that I took from him where he announced his botnet on Jabber with 400,000 bots. Now that person was Daniel K. Nothing to do with this Daniel. It's another Daniel. It's
No.
Daniel K. AKA his alias was Best Buy. He also had Propopet or something, I believe. That was another alias of him. And he actually, in the court proceedings, because he was apprehended, and in the court proceedings, out of the court proceeding came up that he was behind an attack that was reported in the media at some moment that Liberia was under attack and Liberia was disconnected from the world by a DDoS attack. Actually, that was Daniel K. that was attacking MTS Lone Star, and he was paid by an employee from Cellcom. Of course, Cellcom has no idea what has been happening on with that employee, but that employee paid him, and they say the massive amount of $10,000 per day. Sorry, per month, I believe. Yeah, per month. Yeah, and I double checked it yesterday just to be sure because yeah, it was $10,000 per month. I would say I would never do an attack of such an amplitude that brings down a country for $10,000 per month.
Yeah.
I am not sure that this is. But he was living somewhere in Egypt, not in Egypt, in Greece, the island of Greece. What's the island called again? Well, one of the islands.
Was it Cyprus?
Cyprus, yeah, he was in Cyprus at that moment, but he was apprehended as he took a flight from the UK to Cyprus, and that's when they took him. And that's actually so. I have some other presentations where I talk about this one, but that's an actual example of people doing it because we always
Yes.
talk about those things and they're very abstract because yeah, you always think yeah, that's good, that's I can imagine that happening, but we never really see it happening. Well, it is happening really out there. Um,
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting to see the price point too. And
yeah,
hey, you mentioned it was about $10,000 a month for him to launch the attack, but I just want to point out when Mirai had first came out on the darknet marketplaces, they were asking a few $1,000s for anywhere between 50,000, 100,000 bots for the
hmm
week.
yeah.
So it's kind of interesting when you have a powerful botnet or you have a new attack vector, the amount of money that you can get renting out that service is fairly high in comparison to just what we see in the normal DDoS for service market.
Yeah, well, if you look at those prices, talking
Yeah,
about prices, here's a way that they monetize it, right? So you already referred
exactly.
to it. So that's the ransom DDoS campaign, and I think that many of you have heard about it. We wrote about it.
I think
It's
everybody heard about this. This was one of the more louder RDoS campaigns in the last few years.
yeah, and one of the longer, and also one that actually had some follow through attacks. There were quite some attacks following through on this one. Typically, that those
I think
campaigns
that was the most
come and
impressive part.
yeah. So
I really think that was the most impressive part. You know, the last few years when we were watching these RDoS campaigns, we definitely said watch for the follow-up attack,
mhm,
and that was something that they never did. They would just send out an email. They might launch a little 10, 20 gig attack against your website and try to
yeah,
get you to spend a couple $1,000s to them or a couple $100. But in this rampage, I mean, we saw attacks that were going up to 200, 300 gigs on a
yeah,
follow-up, which is
yeah,
brand
absolutely.
new for them.
Yeah, and they, well, I don't know. They probably were not amateurs because they had 200, 300 gigabit per second, and they were able to disrupt some people. But look also at the letters. So the letters that they write, okay, they talk about a peak of 2 terabit per second. They're using names as Fancy Bear, Armada Collective, Lazarus Group. That's what all the other campaigns did. But the interesting part here is so typically when they send a ransom letter like that and people receive it, there's a Bitcoin address in there, and that's the address that you use to pay. Well, those guys were actually tracking the address, and if you didn't pay within 3 or 4 days, we had customers who received a follow-up email from the same guys, another email address, but you know exactly who they were. Well, it was the same guy. They come and say, "Hey, your deadline is over. We checked the Bitcoin address is still empty, which means that you didn't pay up. So if you think that we're bluffing, we're not. We give you a second chance. If you don't pay within a day or within 2 days, we will attack you." And another interesting one that came out of this one is that I saw some of the attacks that were moving towards DNS. So remember the Dyn attacks? Who was
Yeah.
affected by the Dyn attacks? Well, Dyn was affected, of course, but through Dyn, a whole lot of other services like Netflix and PlayStation and all the others, they all went down. Why? Because their DNS was down. So now we're seeing that they are using that as like a backup. So if the main site, so if you get a letter like this, of course, we advise you never to pay. If you have protection in place, with Radware or with one of our competitors, everybody has adequate protection to protect you against those attacks. There's no reason to pay. Even if you pay, you give them incentive, you give them money to buy better tools and to come at you harder, to prolong the campaign, to attack more people. And once you know you are known as a person that pays, there's a target on your back. So they will come back to you because they know that you're a good payer. So maybe next year when the ransom runs again, because typically they come every year around November. They were a little bit earlier in the year. Probably they needed some money because of, yeah, I'm not gonna say the word, but pandemic, right?
Yeah, I mean,
So,
it was very interesting watching the TTPs of this group this year, and
mhm,
how far they have pushed themselves. So, like you said, using the attacks against the DNS service is absolutely amazing, in my opinion. That they have gone from just sending simple email and small attacks to actually getting a little bit more technical.
yeah,
Makes me a little bit more worried about what's going to happen next year when the RDOS campaign comes around. But one thing can be said is we know that a lot of people are not paying these ransoms because if people were paying these ransoms, they would stick around and continue doing this.
mhm,
For this campaign to die off after about a month shows that it was very unsuccessful and it was a failure on their part. Where these attackers were they do a campaign like this and it's a failure, they're going to have to go find another vertical to pick on.
yeah,
They're going to find a new tactic to play. They can't just jump out of this and go to another vertical and say, "Hey, we're a fancy bear again." I mean, that's old and it's gone. So it is interesting watching these cycles throughout the years. I think we've been tracking this for about 5 years now since the original
mhm,
DD4 BC Armada Collective. So
yeah,
it definitely keeps on our feet, doesn't it?
yeah. Yeah, but especially that DNS tactic, because everybody's protecting his own resources. So imagine you're protecting your website, but your DNS is hosted with some other party, and that party has no adequate protection. So what they do is they just attack the DNS server, and your site is offline anyway, even though that you're not under DDoS attack. Because so always watch good from now on. Take care where you put your DNS and make sure that your DNS is also protected, not only your resources, because that's often something that's forgotten. So coming into the tool, so imagine, Daniel, I want to do a ransom DDoS attack. How do I start, right? No, so just that's just for the joke of it. But
Yeah.
there
He's going to give you the real instructions. Well, Pascal, first you need to.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
I just say that for the record that it was a joke because you never know that somebody comes on and starts to listen and says, "Oh, look at these guys. They're just giving some tips out." Because there are actually
no.
videos out there, and that's part of the bring your own, right? The bring your
Yeah,
own.
that's the difficult part. The advertising and the bring your own is just a very different thing, right? You can easily go on to certain video sites
Yeah.
and find detailed instructions of how to build a botnet.
Certain video
And
sites
it's
where we're streaming on right now, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, you can definitely find dozens of videos that will properly take you through the instructions of how to build a Mirai botnet or Hoho or whatever variant you happen to download. If that is past your technical skills and ability, you can always buy a botnet outright, or you can rent a botnet. It, it, it gets very scary of how easy it is. Back in the
Mhm.
day when we first started writing about this, the darknet marketplace is definitely a big place for people to go to. But on the ClearNet, as simple as just going to Google and searching for boot or stressor, you'll find dozens of results. It's. I wrote a paper. Was it back in 2000? I want to say 2019 July about the normalization of DDoS attacks, and I truly believe that DDoS in general has become a normalized norm, in the fact that there isn't really much done to stop it. I mean, just looking right here as far as build your own botnet, buy a botnet, rent a botnet, and professional rental services. To me, it doesn't scream out that we have a handle on this problem. That in general, the
Mhm.
industry um, is lacking at stopping DDoS attacks. And I wouldn't say necessarily it's the mitigation side, but how do you build a botnet? You need to have reflectors, you need to have vulnerable devices, and
Mhm.
that's the ultimate problem. There is that you have companies that are just white labeling devices and putting out vulnerable devices. They don't care, they don't patch, they don't
Yeah,
they don't
that's
have
the
any
whole
update.
IoT
And
problem. Yeah.
yeah, but it's just it's definitely a hard thing out there when you're watching all this happen and you're watching
Yeah.
uh, people advertise on Google. I think we'll talk about a little bit later about how the NCA ran a campaign uh, to warn people about not buying DDoS tools, and you could actually find DDoS tools advertised right underneath the same
Uh,
advertisement saying not to do it. So in general, I think DDoS has become a norm. I don't think it's gone away. I think it's
Well,
becoming a
it's
bigger
not.
problem.
Yeah, it's not like they did not try, right? Because the authorities have taken down several times massive amounts
Yeah,
of
and
DDoS
that's
for
one of
rent.
those
No?
things is like, did that actually work? I mean, you had
Well,
15
yeah,
taken down this
it
year,
did
15 taken down
maybe for
last
one
year.
week, right? It works for a week, 2 weeks, and then there's a void, and yeah, whenever there's a void and opportunity, well, you have others replacing
Well,
that void, right?
it was like with a recent takedown. There's a lot of people that are following, or I'm not sorry, not the recent one, the one in 2018 where the FBI took down 15 sites.
Hmm.
There is an academic team that did some reports and followed through on that. A lot of these stressors that were taken down came back. Just because you take down the front end does not mean the back end is gone. And
Yeah.
you just simply take down a domain, defcon.pro all of a sudden becomes defconpro.com. It's just, it's silly. It's becoming very difficult to enforce these kind of things too. We just can't
Yeah.
go out and take anything down. We have to call law enforcement. We have to go through the proper procedures, and then when you get down to it, places like KV Solutions exist, bulletproof hosting services that,
Hmm.
they go out and they raid this service hosting provider. They take the servers, and then the next day, I think it was like Black Lotus had found that the C2 had moved from KV Solution to another one within like 24 hours. So uh, does it stop anything? No. And these people are just going to make more and more profit as the time goes on, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, as you said, the root cause is that we have so many resources out there that's so easy to abuse. And we're not only talking about IoT devices, but also open servers like Memcached. Remember Memcached?
Exactly. Yeah. NTP, DNS, all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have the resources in the modems that can be abused for DDoS attacks, and then you have also the massive reflection attacks that we saw, which are really like using the internet as a reflector. But first, you need to have those bots or those big servers to initiate that reflection. But then second comes that reflection, and then it's like everybody is doesn't know anymore what's going on because people see SYN attack coming from a spoofed source, and that spoofed source is the victim. So imagine the victim is radware.com, and somebody like who would I say, ING.
Lizard's
Yeah,
Claw.
no, but somebody like ING gets
Yeah.
packets with a target IP ING and with the source IP Radware, which is actually the attacker who spoofed the source IP to radware.com. So ING sees a SYN attack coming in on his servers from radware.com. What does ING do? I'm gonna blacklist Radware. And well, if you do that, you're gonna blacklist like maybe a customer, right? Now, when ING gets that SYN, it's gonna send the SYN-ACK to radware.com. Now, Radware sees that it comes from ING, so it looks like ING is attacking Radware. So Radware, would they blacklist ING? No, they will not blacklist ING because yeah, there might be a good reason that they come. So it makes it more difficult to blacklist. So all the easy ACLs that you would set up, everything that comes from this or an unknown region or geographical filtering, well, it doesn't work when they use reflection, and I'm gonna yeah. It screws with people's minds because on both sides,
Yeah.
both and ING and Radware, people are confused. What the hell is happening?
The TCP reflection attacks were a very interesting thing that happened
Hmm.
this year.
Yeah.
It just once again it goes to show that these bot herders, these people are looking to rent botnets or to sell botnets, are looking for new TTPs to make sure that their botnet's most advanced, that they can justify their cost of selling these devices. Right?
Hmm.
If I'm going to go rent a service, I want to make sure it has all the new attack vectors. I want to launch a TCP reflection attack.
Yeah.
If they don't have it, I'm going to go find someone else that does. So there's a market created there for individuals to go find the best service they want to, and it's all over the place too. It's not just on
Yeah.
Twitter anymore. It's just not on ClearNet. It's pretty interesting. And like
Yeah,
you're
we're gonna
showing
come
here,
back to the market. We're gonna come
yeah,
back
the
to the market
advertisement
in a
problem.
second. Yeah.
Like I was saying, is that you can see an example on Google Ads of the NCAA saying booting is illegal, and at the same time you find Adam Stresser to advertise. So I mean, what kind of message does it send to the user? If you're looking to commit an illegal crime and you go to Google and it says, well, this is a crime, but you also can rent this service here. Like, yeah, shooting
Mhm.
someone's a crime, but I can go buy a gun. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. And like we were talking as well, Bing videos or YouTube. Tons of videos of
Absolutely. Yeah.
people setting up botnets and very detailed instructions too.
Yeah.
Hell, if you have a problem with this, sometimes you can actually message these people
Oh yeah, you just
on
jump
in
on
the
Discord,
Telegram.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, Discord or Telegram. The
Yeah.
author is going to sit there and tell you you're an idiot, but they're going to tell you how to do it.
Yeah.
That's the scary thing is the amount of help out there to commit a crime is greater than those that are trying to prevent it.
That's how it starts, right? It's
Yeah,
it's it's all about fun and helping others, and then suddenly the line to cross is very slim. You see the
yeah.
monetization on the other side. You see some examples where people got away with it. So yeah.
Well, I mean, these booters and stressors can make thousands of dollars a week. I mean, they can
Yeah.
make more money than the actual legitimate researchers. So that's a bigger problem. There is, they're just focusing on one cyber crime,
Yeah.
denial of service attacks, and they're making a boatload of money with these
Hmm.
services. There's been many DDoS stressors that have been leaked in the past, and you can just go through and look at who's being targeted, the kind of API services they're offering. It's not a pretty sight out there for the DDoS industry.
Yeah. So here are the marketplaces. So what I'm gonna start with the Jabber one because I mentioned it before. So that's the one from Daniel K. So where he
Yeah.
was renting his botnet 400,000 devices big. So and that was on Jabber. That was back in 2016. But since then, markets have moved along. And I'll let Daniel because he's the expert in those markets and those people. I mean the
uh,
expert as a security researcher. Yeah.
the interesting thing that I just hinted at earlier is that it's not really on Twitter anymore. When I first started working with Radware and DDoS is very prevalent on Twitter. Many times there'd be an attack launch and people want to know who did it. It's Lizard Squad, and Lizard Squad would be tweeting there like crazy. Oh, we took him down, Tango down, blah 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 blah
They're on TikTok now,
blah.
right?
Well, the funny thing is they would ever yeah they're TikTok in jail.
Yeah.
um, and after the attack, Lizard Squad and all these other DDoSers would literally advertise their stressor service like Chiron or Lizard Stressor. You don't see that so much anymore. On Twitter, we don't have notorious DDoS gangs just roaming threads. A lot of them have left and they've gone to Instagram, which is strange. An example here, we have Ryan, aka Greek Helios, and his reseller on Instagram. These are accounts that you can go to, and they're very helpful. They'll tweet out or they'll post in the middle of the night. Do you need help? Hit me up. I can help you here. Do you need to buy something?
Yeah.
Um, they're definitely a moving product. And the thing I find interesting is the difference between Twitter and Instagram is the way they advertise, right? So on Twitter, they would knock something down and they say, "Hey, this is our stressor service." On Instagram, they're actually taking pictures of their stressor. They're taking pictures of their botnet and they're putting up these screenshots. To me, it's a change in OPSEC there. The Lizard Squad kids, Lulsec kids, they didn't want to share screenshots of their attack panels and things like that. Where now you can just go to Instagram and you can find Greek Helios posting up actual live videos from his Discord as he's launching attacks.
Oh yeah, yeah, but you
Um,
have them on YouTube as well, and they have been there for a while. So the example
yeah,
in the bottom there is it's a Mirai. That's the guy who is selling it, and you see how can you buy it? How can you get in contact? Well, you just go to Discord. You go to Discord, you ping up the guy, and then you can make a deal. You can
It,
run this
and the
botnet.
weird thing is, like from binary analysis, sometimes these authors actually put their handles inside the string, so you know where to go find them.
Yeah.
Some people say that it could be false attribution, but needless to say, it still takes you to an author and an attacker.
Well, yeah,
So even if it's
it
frame job, it's advertising them. It takes me to their
exactly.
user.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say the same. It's like advertising, you know. You have that product. We are getting hit by bots. The whole world sees bots coming in and attacking. Oh, that's a very active botnet. And when we analyze, oh, there's a string out there that says Greek Helios. Okay, so yeah, that's kind of an advertisement, right? Putting their
Oh
stamp
yeah,
in
for
there.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It's either advertisement by them or advertisement by someone else. But the only negative side effect is if that bin hits a researcher's honeypot and we actually look at it and we go to their Instagram account. And
Yeah.
even then, it might not be a bad thing. You might find someone like Ryan and just sit on his account for months.
Yeah, talking about activity, remember I told you this
Hi,
weekend?
Ryan.
Yeah, by the way, we cannot see the names who's live, but yeah, can always be that somebody's there, right? Now, if the author of Mosey is watching and listening, please stop Mosey because Mosey is killing my internet. I told you this weekend that I got so many attacks from Mosey coming
Yeah.
into my honeypots. Well, I powered off my honeypots on the internet because it was killing me. I could not even do the stream anymore. I got terabytes of downloads in my honeypots at home, and my home line is just saturated by it. So I had to turn it off. So either that somebody that's behind Mosey is DDoSing me. It's a possibility, right? He found out where my honeypots are and he's DDoSing me. Or there's so much activity that is really this we cannot hold anymore. So shout
I
out
mean, the amount of activity is
to Mosey.
impressive.
Stop it, please. You're hurting
Yeah.
me. You're making it personal.
It's a tough one. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of impressive to see that much traffic at the same time. It makes you just wonder just a little bit.
No.
Is this a design DOS against
Yeah,
researchers?
because it's really it jumped. Well, no, I have like on the norm. I have only a few honeypots across the world, but it's like I see 10, 15,000 events per day. It jumped to 1.5 million per day. So
Yeah.
that's 1,000 times jump. And it was like that for the past 2, 3 years because I've been running those honeypots for 2, 3 years. Not always in the same place, and sometimes some go up, some go down. But in general, per honeypot, I am never in the millions. So it's the first time that something is hitting me so hard. At least the first time since Brickerbot, because Brickerbot, that was a guy that was
Yeah.
after the device. So once he sees the device, he's coming down on it and he brings his friends and all try to. So it's a little bit like the same activity and very much the same as Hajime. Remember Hajime?
Yep.
That was the first and probably the longest botnet in history to stay alive. It was also peer-to-peer botnet, also
Which is
leveraging
yeah.
very much the same design as Mosey. And yeah, a lot of us thought that Hajime was actually the one that was lost. So the author lost the keys, or the author went on and he just left the botnet, and it's just out there, just growing by itself and working by itself until all the vulnerabilities are plugged and it cannot take anymore. And the same way as with Hajime, I still did not find any payload for attacks in Mosey. That is also still a question that's out there. What is this Mosey about? We see a lot of activity in India, in China now from devices coming at us, but what is he up to? What is the author?
Yeah. Like you
So
said, with the payload missing as far as denial of service attacks, it really kind of makes you scratch your head and wonder what's going on out there. Is it crypto mining? Is it proxies?
yeah,
Um,
well, yeah,
Definitely building something. And then you wonder if they lost control of it or not. I mean, 80% of the IoT traffic this month being Mosey.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Definitely a lot of research to be done around that subject.
yeah. The scary thing about the Hajime and also the Mosey, and we talked a lot about Hajime in the time, but the scary thing is that the author he has access if he has access to that peer-to-peer network, he can change the payload in like an instance. He can just upload new modules with payload and he can make turn it into a crypto miner, and next week he can turn it into a DDoS attacker, and the week after he can turn it into a um, credential stuffing bot, or whatever he wants. So and he can change
Which
that
kind of ties us back to,
very dynamically.
yeah, and it kind of ties us back to the project or the topic as far as monetization of
Hmm.
botnets, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't just necessarily have to be DDoS. I mean, people do crypto mining, they do proxy for web traffic, they do all kinds of things with botnets. So finding out why they have such a large infrastructure and who they might be selling it to is a very interesting thing. If they're not selling to someone, what are they planning? You
Yeah.
know, it's very interesting to see these kind of things happen and wonder what the motive is behind the author.
Yeah, that's why we started with all those different actors and motives. And because if you look at Brickerbot, that was more like a hacktivist. He was out there to change and to better the world. Of course, he was destroying devices. Cannot say that he was a good guy, but typically
He was a hero
hacktivists.
that we didn't deserve.
Yeah, well, yeah, that that was one of the titles of the blogs, right?
Yeah.
He's the hero we didn't deserve. But yeah, so yeah, it's Mosey and Hajime. We also thought, and Hajime actually announced himself as, "Oh, hey, I'm a white guy. I'm not here to destroy anything. I'm just here to protect your device."
Right.
So
Well,
which
it's
is
not really white hat. It's more like gray hat for sure.
well, once you start stepping over
Authorization.
in other people's property, I think that you're in a gray zone, right? E-
Yeah, for sure.
Even if your intentions are white, you took ownership of a device that's not yours. So
Yeah.
but yeah, it's still a big problem, and I don't see it go away. And we are like all working at fueling it at the same time because every vulnerability we find and we publish, we we saw it with that 0 day
With all.
from Microsoft this week.
Oh yeah.
That the FBI sent Zero Log on, it was called, right? So
Yeah.
it came out. The researchers that found it, of course, want credit for their work, and they deserve credit for their work, and they explain how they did it, which is very interesting. But based on that, white and black hats were able to build proof of concept in less than a day. And now
I mean,
today,
that's the tough thing.
Microsoft is coming out saying, "Hey, it's under attack, so please go ahead and patch it because people are actively using the exploits." So that's the thing. We are researchers. Okay, we do for good, but at the same time, we are giving the keys or the research to the people who can abuse it.
I definitely would have to agree with that. And one of the examples I could point back to is the hoax call IRC botnet,
Mm.
where you could actually watch the author cycle through multiple
Yeah,
vulnerabilities, testing to see which one actually had the best impact,
yeah,
and then dropping vulnerabilities that were not working for them.
yeah.
They even accepted some vulnerabilities that weren't working for them either, which is kind of funny. Um, but yeah, like you said, I mean, these vulnerabilities that the author for Hoax Call IRC was using, these vulnerabilities not come from black hat or gray hat researchers. They came from normal security researchers on the legal side that publish an exploit that gets CVE or something like
Yeah,
that. And next thing you know, a malicious actor is going through your blog and says, "Hey, I can use that."
yeah, absolutely.
Um, it's difficult because we try to help, but at the same time, if we don't patch and we don't mitigate and update in the proper amount of time, then we're actually hurting. It goes back to the subject with like DNS and NTP, right? Like if we have all these devices out there that are exposed and no one's patching them, then what are we doing? We're just
Yeah.
leaving all these devices out there to be exposed, to be leveraged in these attacks, which fuel the marketplace because more people go out there and build botnets and they have more leverage to actually launch an attack because there's more devices to go after. When Mirai first came out, it was just brute force credential. But
Yeah.
it wasn't just like a year later before people start bringing RCEs into the
Oh,
botnet
not
itself.
not even a year later. It was
Yeah.
already, so October was Mirai, November Daniel K again was testing his UPnP XMPP exploit. Remember the NTP server one in the XMPP? So
Yeah.
that was in the UPnP. So that was the start of those management exploit. It was not the UPn TR069. That was the one. TR069, the management protocol used by provider. But later on, UPnP was abused like hundreds of times in different exploits. It's just those devices. Well, it's not the protocol of UPnP. UPnP is very flexible, allows lots of things, but it was never built to be used on the internet. Of course, when
Right.
you build the device and you install the server by default, it's exposed on all the interfaces. And then if you allow UPnP without authentication, with administration access and root access, and you let it run by default on that web server that's in there by default, well, then you get a disaster, right? Because everybody on the internet can just access it. And that is what happened, yeah. And yeah, as you say, patching, yeah, there are patches out there. Some devices are patched, other devices are vulnerable forever and will never see a patch. But even the ones that are patched, how many of them actually get updates? That is
Yeah.
the biggest question, because we are talking, and especially in the IoT, in the home IoT, those people, when they buy a new router, they take it out of the box, they follow the YouTube video to set it up, and if it works, it's like, oh yeah, it's a miracle, it works. Don't touch it.
Yeah. I mean,
So, and it's
exactly.
done. And if it doesn't break, well, there's no need to fix it. Why would I
I
do
mean,
the
one of the things
upgrade?
I've said at many conferences too, when I was giving presentations, is that my dad was really mad about this. He was in the audience when I said this. Is I use him as an example that my dad doesn't update or patch until I come visit him once a year.
Mhm.
And as sad as the reality as it is,
You
that
need to
is the
visit him
truth,
more
right?
often.
That,
He would patch more.
but there's a lot of people out there that don't do it until their
Yeah,
children come home or someone in the family that's
exactly. Yeah,
techy. And that's a huge problem there. We
yeah,
need to educate more users so
yeah.
they're familiar with firmware
Yeah,
updates.
but why? does your father wait until you come? Because next time you go there, you're gonna update it, you're gonna run into troubles, it's gonna take you 3 hours to fix it, and then you're gonna say, "Oof, it's fixed." So that doesn't inspire confidence now, does it? So next time, of
No,
course, he's not gonna do it himself, right? Because they're so difficult, those upgrades sometimes. So many things can
and it's also,
happen.
I'll take a little blame myself. I don't sit there and hold his hand and show him exactly how to do it all.
Yeah.
And he just assumes that I'll do it when I show up. I assume I'll do it when I show up, and that's how we move forward with his security.
Yeah.
But I'm not the only one. There's tons of people out there that like that, and that's why we have so many devices available to be leveraged for DDoS as a service.
Yeah. Well, another problem to be solved by automation, if you ask me. If we can automate all the patching and all that stuff, it needs to be automated. As long as you need people, if you rely on people to do it, it will never happen. But
You
automation,
know, it's
it should
it's a
do it.
slippery slope, right? So like the ISPs would be the ones pushing these updates and doing that, right?
Well, not always, because so
It's like
in
you
some
open one door to
cases,
help.
yeah, yeah, and in some cases it's the ISP, but it can also be auto updates of devices. You know, you have newer devices that are just pulling on the internet, and whenever there's an update, even my firewall, I have my firewall at home. It's updating by itself. I put it in automatic update. Only do it at 4 o'clock in the morning because that's when I'm never awake, typically. So he does it by itself, and until now, fingers crossed, but it didn't go wrong. So nothing really stupid happened. So I would say if everybody would go for that to the automatic upgrade, yeah, that would be great. But let's go back to our topic because we're diverting. DDoS as a
Happens.
service, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
we just have just a couple of screenshots show you how easy it is. And actually, the websites that you see here, they look better than many online websites of small shops where you go buy and where you pay, where you check out for real legitimate stuff. They came a good way. There are tutorials on YouTube. When you go on YouTube, you can find how to build a DDoS as a service portal, how to build a booter portal. And they start coding and they show you step by step. And that's probably why they all look the same, more or less, except for the colors and the backgrounds. But yeah, they have the tools out there to make nice portals, and they're very convenient and very user friendly. You log in, of course, they promise you that they're not gonna log anything, but I would still be careful because we know that they are logging and they are keeping track of what people are doing, at least to
And
some
I was
extent.
and
That's
I was talking
Daniel's
with one of
topic,
my
yeah.
buddies. Well, I was going to say I was talking with one of my buddies, a few researcher George, about this actual service here. Is when you see a stressor service stay online for so long, with many abuse reports sent, you kind of have to stop and wonder who's behind it, and what their purpose is. Um,
Can you
with law
elaborate?
enforcement.
Ah, okay. Law enforcement.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was trying to tiptoe around the subject without
Mhm.
getting into the blame game, but in the past we know that some of these trusted services have been managed or overlooked by federal agencies,
Mhm.
and when you see a service that has stuck around for so long, and has not gone down, you kind of have to wonder: is it a trap by researchers? Is it a trap by law enforcement? Is it actually a
Yeah.
legitimate service? And in this
Honeypot. Yeah.
situation, yeah. In this situation, the service is definitely legitimate, but the question is, why has it been around for so long?
Yeah. Yeah, that is, yeah, and indeed, that's a good question, and that's probably the main point that you want to take away if you're listening and you don't have expertise on doing DDoS attacks. Don't just go out there and take a DDoS as a service and start doing attacks, because at
No,
some
and
point you will be prosecuted, you know?
that's a huge crime. I mean, personally,
Yeah.
me, I would love to go sit here and spend all my money and go rent all these services and
Oh
attack
yeah.
our network and fingerprint everything. But right now, there's probably a federal agent on this actual stream that's saying, "Oh, well, make sure he doesn't give any money to criminals." And
Yeah.
it makes it difficult to research these things. But it's something I do tell people all the time when they're like, "Oh, I'm just going to rent this service to test my server." Like, no, that's actually a crime.
Mhm.
Not only giving money to a criminal, but launching an attack and watching that attack traffic go across multiple infrastructures. Um,
Yeah, there.
Highly suggest not to engage in this activity.
Well, we do advise people to test their DDoS infrastructure, and there's specialized parties out there. There's like pen testing companies, but they come at you with big contracts and with all kinds of things that you have to fill in and you
Approvals,
have
yeah.
to prove. Here, DDoS as a service, all you have to put in is you don't even have to give your real email address. If you give a fake address, you can get in. You just create
Yeah.
an account completely anonymous. You go in and you can put any IP address you want to attack. There's no check if it's yours. There's no check of your identity. When you go to pen testers, they go through all the steps of making sure that you are who you are. You say that you own that company, that you own that range, that you can do a test on it, and then that's legitimate. So there's nothing wrong about that.
Exactly.
We do advise you to do those tests, but do it with real companies and people who give that service and who are experienced in that service. Just don't go onto a portal and say, okay, I'm going to do a quick test for myself. No, that it doesn't work
Yeah,
like
but
that.
like these services, they don't verify any information, like you said. They don't ask you if you're on the network. They don't ask
No,
you if you have permission. They just fire and forget. And some, like you said, you don't even have to actually sign up for some of these.
no,
They are just given for free.
no.
And people are like, oh, well, small 1 gig attacks are nothing to worry about. Yeah,
Oh,
they are.
oh yeah, yeah.
They're the majority of the actual attacks that happen out there.
Well, if yeah, take for example, especially now in COVID, how many people are working remotely, and working remotely means that you have a VPN to the HQ, to the branch office, or to the head office, right? So the head office line, how much is the head office line? It's not 1 terabit per second now, is it? So
Oh no.
there's many out there, 200, 400, 600, 800, maybe 2 gigs. So there's DDoS as a service out there. I found one where I had to register with a real email address, not mine, but I had to register one. And that one had a free tier where you could run a 1.5 gigabit per second attack for 5 minutes. And you could do as many as you wanted on any IP address. And that was for free. That was just to demo the service. So imagine a 1.5, that's already maybe 60, 70%
Yeah.
of the organizations that come into play that you can attack and you can mess with and you can disrupt for 5 minutes, which is already, yeah, it can be annoying, you know. So and that's a free
It's pretty
tier.
amazing that
So
yeah, it's amazing that. Okay, so like for example, to go back to RDOS, right? They claim that they have 2 terabit per second attack
mm,
capability, and then you go to these DDoS stressor services, and they say we have 5, 600 VIP, 8, 900.
yeah,
Um, they all over exaggerate, but the one thing that I can tell you from the last 5 years working in this industry, it doesn't take more than 10 to topple anything. You
mhm,
know, if you have 10 and you have the proper tactics, techniques, and procedures to launch that attack, you're taking almost anything down.
yeah,
And so when you see these services that say, "Hey, it's so high," but in reality it's low, and people complain like, "Oh, that's not enough." It is enough.
yeah.
I think more or less the people that are using it saying it's not enough are people that really don't understand what they're doing, like script kiddies, where they purchase a service like this and they don't understand the infrastructure attacking or how to attack it. Basically, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Well, yeah, on this one, the enterprise level subscription is like $2,000 per month, and that's for 225 gigabit per second, 1 hour
And
attacks.
was this the one that, yeah, it has a two-factor authentication so you can
Yeah.
make sure your account doesn't get hijacked and API services and everything? I
Yeah, yeah,
mean,
yeah. So,
is this a crime or is this legal? It's a crime, but
but
it
look,
doesn't seem like it when you actually look at it.
yeah, but look at how they organize. They have basic, premium, enterprise,
Yeah.
and
I
this
mean,
one doesn't even take logs, but the other ones keep your history. And by the way, history is a log, so they keep a
and
nice history of who you attack.
for some fun comparison, was it in, I think it was like 2016 when Sharon was going around, the Lizard Squad stressor.
Hmm.
A 1200 second attack at 35 gigabits per second was 1999. And you look at the pricing of some of these stressors and you wonder, it looks like the prices have gone down, if anything, when looking at some of the newer examples.
Yeah.
But then when you bridge over to Instagram or you bridge over to the darknet forums, that's where you can find some of the more custom packages that we've talked about. Where if you specifically want to target China, there's packages out there that you can get for that. If you want to specifically target the gaming industry, a high streamer
Yeah.
could easily cost you $1,000 a day to launch an attack against someone's streaming service.
Yeah,
Um,
most of these services they have like node sitting inside, like the OVH, and at the time with the Mirai attacks, they had booters and stressors that were named OVH attacks. So their type of attack was OVH, and what they had actually was renting machines inside OVH, and then they performed the attack from inside OVH. So they never really
East
come
West, yeah.
from the outside, and all the protection is based on the outside. So typically people protect the outside of the data center, not the inside. But if you're a cloud service provider, well, you need to protect east-west boundaries as well. It's not enough to protect that outside perimeter alone. And those
Well, that's
attacks
going to be
prove that. Yeah.
a dangerous trend in the coming future.
Oh
In
yeah,
the past, it
absolutely.
was who had the biggest attack and how far outside you could
Yeah.
be to launch that attack. And
Yeah.
now I don't need a huge hand cannon. I just need to crawl up into the data center and launch a small
Yeah.
little attack east west. And
Yeah, that was one of the first reflections I made when I saw remember the record attack on AWS? That was
yeah,
2.1,
well,
2.7,
they had a
2.7.
few. They had the first one they closed by themselves, and the second one they just closed with Akamai. It was like 2.3 and then 2.7, I think it
Yeah,
was.
so a 2.7 terabit per second, but it came from the outside. Now I wonder what would happen if that would be on the inside of the network.
You wouldn't need to have an attack that big, in my opinion. I mean,
Well, I am pretty sure that
depends on who your target is.
that there are some, if the server is exposed on the outside, it's also exposed on the inside, right? So
Right.
let's assume Memcached kind of scenario, right? Memcached, there were plenty of them in Amazon, not only in Amazon, not targeting Amazon. There was also in other hosting providers, but there's plenty of them in the hosting provider. So if they are exposed externally, they can also be reached from a node inside, which uses typically a different route. It's not always that it's backhauled through the whole security stack. So nowadays, that's why we talk about east-west security. But if you have to protect your east-west security with multi-terabit DDoS, that's becoming quite something.
Yeah, the future is not going to be pretty for DDoS. I think it's one of the more important reasons why we get out there and start patching devices and also start working on reflectors and taking those
Mm.
reflectors down, or at least preventing them from being abused.
Well, they will find new
That can be the biggest
reflectors.
step.
They will use you as a reflector. They used me as a reflector. They use everybody as a
Yeah,
reflector, right? And so,
that was the most impressive part about the TCP reflection attack is how they're
oh
able
yeah.
to leverage everybody. Yeah.
Well, yeah. The part that actually that I was the most that was the most interesting to me, and also that I said, how is this possible? Is like typically you have that three-way handshake. You have the SYN, the SYN-ACK, and then you send the ACK, and then the server sends the hello. Like he shows you the banner for Telnet login, he will show you banner. For an FTP, he will show you something else. Now, what some vendors, so some, or not only vendors, but open source as well, what they actually do is an optimization. If you send the SYN, once they send the SYN-ACK, they already start pushing the data that comes after the banner. They're not waiting for the ACK to come back, which is like, yeah, okay, well, that saves me a round trip, right? So it's a good
Right.
optimization. However, when you do a SYN attack and you spoof the address, so you send the SYN to the reflector, and then the reflector sends the SYN-ACK, and the reflector starts to pushing the data, well, he's pushing to the victim, and actually you have amplification. So that's where we saw these big amplifications in that paper from the German university in TCP reflection. It's a really interesting one because and it's not overutilized yet out there. So it's a tactic that we've seen in November of last year, combined with the carpet bombing evasion technique. That was pretty hefty and pretty interesting technically as well. So there are some things that have been happening in the last 2 years that I say that okay that was smart. I see that there's still even though that DDoS is one of the oldest attacks and always coming back and it seems to be simple, but at the same time there's small nuances that they're finding always to improve it and make it more sophisticated to defend
Yeah.
against.
Well, it's because it's a market. At the end of the day, they're making profit off of it. So
Mhm.
they're going to spend a lot of time every day to go
Mm.
find new attack vectors and new devices to abuse because they're making 19.99 a pop.
Yeah, well, it's not only them. There's also security researchers who are paid to find vulnerabilities, and yeah,
Very true.
we we don't really do vulnerability. I'm just changing the slide because I don't want to leave the prices up too long. Otherwise, YouTube will think that we're running a publicity here.
Advertisement campaign.
Yeah, so I prefer to put up this. So,
Oh wow.
so yeah, Daniel, anything you want to add? We're almost at the end of the hour. I
No,
think we're
the one
55
thing I just
minutes in.
want to add is that the change of the darknet marketplace and the forums. It used to be a very big thing to go to the darknet marketplace with forums to go find
Mhm.
attack services. And what I'm finding is that the darknet is not really a viable option anymore for purchasing attack services as far as DDoS goes. You can find more DDoS services on normal ClearNet forums
Mhm.
and Instagram than anything nowadays. So I think that's once again going to the DDoS normalization. We're just starting to see it just become a little bit more normal, a little bit more accepted. Where 5 years ago it was a little bit more of a fringe topic that not a lot of people knew about.
Yeah, which made me think about something that we can discuss again. DDoS on the dark web.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
and exit
that's a whole nother
scams,
subject there.
and exit scams,
Yeah,
right? Because we had it recently. One of the bigger marketplaces who didn't, well, we think or some believe it's an exit scam, but they were also under attack and being extorted by somebody, as they say. And
yeah.
every month they had to pay a certain amount of money because they were always getting DDoS. So to stay online, they had to pay a certain amount. Then they said, yeah, but now it's enough. We cannot pay anymore. We will stop it. And they took the actual escrow, so the money that was in there, they took it with them. Quite some money.
The way I look at that is kind of the same way as things happen on the streets. There's street taxes, right? Like in general, dealers cannot go set up on a corner without it being their territory, and they pay their taxes on it. For a long time, the darknet marketplace was an untaxed street corner, and so you saw malicious DDoSers come in and start extorting different market owners to pay their street tax to continue operating.
Yeah.
Um, this could be actually a new dynamic as far as DOS goes on the darknet as it moves forward. It's criminal versus criminal, not criminal versus victim.
Yeah, that's interesting. That will be the topic for the next one. That's how much tax you pay as a criminal, right? You thought you were not gonna pay
uh,
tax, but actually you are paying. You're gonna pay tax anyway.
Hold on, let me go to downtown Denver real quick and start asking people, how much do you pay?
Uh, do you need protection? Yeah, okay.
Oh,
That goes far enough now.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
let me just see in the chat. So yeah, I just had a couple of messages throughout. So Pat B said it's good morning from New York City. So yeah, good morning. If you're still with us, because that
Hey,
was already 1 hour ago almost. And Michael says thanks, interesting. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Appreciate joining. Appreciate everyone who has been joining. We're gonna close off here. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to leave a comment below. We will try to answer the question. If you want to see previous episodes, we have on the same channel from Redware, we have the previous episodes. We also have a landing page where you can find more resources. I'm gonna bring together the resources so that you can access it. Maybe one more screen to show you. That's where you can find what we have been talking about, because we've been talking about the ransom campaign. We have been talking about the DDoS for hire. Those are actually two alerts that one. So the DDoS for hire was Daniel who wrote it. I wrote the ransom DDoS, but we work closely together. So you can come with questions to both of us. You land basically in the same team. But you can find them on security.redware.com. If you go there, you just go to threat advisories and attack reports, and then you will find those reports, and they're in PDF, so they're not that long. Sometimes we go longer, like Daniel's. Well, it's written quite, yeah. You have a lot of screenshots and a lot of writing. Some more deeper than what we talked about, what we discussed. The ransom campaign is a little bit less deep because it's just of an alert where we want to get people aware of it. But if we have some interesting stuff to talk about, we will certainly come back and post there. So stay in touch. Thank you very much, and hope to see you on the next one, which will be in about 3 to 4 weeks. So stay tuned. Thank you very
be
much.
safe, everyone.
Thank you,
Keep
Daniel. Bye bye.
Take care. Have a good one.